Today, I want to welcome a Vancouver legend in sports media, a man whose voice has been a staple in BC sports for decades. Don Taylor, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Hall. So, thank you. Thank you for coming. This is, a big honor for me. I've followed you since Sports Page, and I used to work in a truck and driving around and listening to you all the time. So you coming in, it's a big honor. Yeah. Normally, I'm not in front of the cameras. I'm normally the guy behind the cameras. So it's a little awkward for me today, but welcome.
I should have been behind the cameras. I'm envious. And by the way, I have to say this just because I know there were people checking this out who will want to remind you and everyone else that I'm not trying to, blow my own horn here, but I was also inducted into the Burnaby Sports Hall of Fame last year, and that's my hometown. I'm very proud of it. I'm a North Burnaby guy, so I just wanted to make sure I got that out there. And you know what? I have to say that at the banquet, I think the Burnaby Sports Hall of Fame food might have been better than the BC Sports Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
But that's another story. Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. What made you get into broadcasting? How did you know that you wanted to be on the radio?
Well, I started out wanting to be a commercial artist, graphic design, whatever the case may be. It's in my family, and my dad's side of the family. It's full of people who are musicians or artists. My dad was a really nice sketch artist, and that's sort of what I felt I was going to do. I did fairly well at that during school. And then I had a couple of opportunities to shadow an artist who was extremely good, a graphic artist, and he was broke all the time. So I realized at the time that, maybe there's something else I should try to get into. Times were different back then. I had a friend who was really interested in broadcasting. And of course, the name that kept sticking out before BCIT got really big was the Columbia School of Broadcasting. They were having some sort of a seminar, some sort of meet and greet one day. And he convinced me to go down and check it out. He hated it. I loved it. I thought it was great. And even though he was the one who asked me to go, I thought, man, this is kind of cool. I think I'll try this out. One thing led to another. I went to Columbia for a year or two, got my diploma, and got a job up north in Dawson Creek. And the experience at Columbia, I had an instructor by the name of Bill DeCarteret who's left us, and he was just wonderful. I used a lot of the things that he taught me back then to this very day, and did throughout my career. And then I went up north to Dawson Creek, and that was just a fabulous experience. As scary as it was, most of my friends were going to Europe. I went to Dawson Creek.
And how old were you at this point?
19.
19
years old.
Leaving home.
Yeah, leaving home, which I was the last of 6 kids. So I don't know if my mom and dad even noticed when I left. Where's that young one? And so I a kid, of course, but I ended up going up north for 5 years, Dawson Creek, and then Red Deer, Alberta. And I just loved it. It was, even though I'm Canadian, to go that far up north was culture shock in a way. Yeah. And I got into it. I was lucky enough to be a hockey player, so I got into the community that way, playing commercial hockey and beer league softball and things like that. And just the experience of doing everything from being a weather person to a newscaster to an overnight DJ to eventually being a sportscaster. And it was just tremendous. And I liked the lifestyle too. I really liked it up north.
So what was your moment that you came down to Vancouver then? Was that Sports Page or was that something else?
It was. What happened was I was in Red Deer at the time, and I was doing radio at a station called CKGY, country music station in central Alberta, a big station. It was the number one station, as you might imagine, in Red Deer, Alberta, that a country station would be number one. But I was the sports director there. A sports director, meaning I was the only person in the department, but I had a really cool title. So that was great. I was lucky enough to work as a volunteer for Shaw Cable. And I used to do hockey play-by-play, various sportscasts for them. And as a result, got very comfortable and kind of was doing television in Dawson Creek as well. But what the Shaw Cable experience gave me was the ability to make an edition tape, because I'd done all these volunteer hours. When I got a chance to get a job down in my hometown of Vancouver, I was able to compile an edition tape. They helped me out with that, and made my way. I applied at CKVU, didn't get the job at first. Somebody else got the job at Sports Page, iconic, legendary show. Paul Carson was the boss. He hired someone else, and he just said, Donnie, you're very young, and if something doesn't work out with this other gentleman, you're my guy. Well, 2 or 3 weeks later, I guess it didn't work out. I don't know what happened. I don't know if the guy was having some sort of problems going on the air or showing up on time. Anyway, so I went down and did from Red Deer to Vancouver. Did a couple of reports as kind of a test, and I got hired.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you worked with a lot of the big, legendary Vancouver sportscasters there, right?
Yeah.
You had JP.
Yeah.
Was your boss.
Yeah, no, Paul was. Paul Carson was my boss. JP came later with CKNW.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, JP McConnell, for people who don't know. But Paul Carson was the guy there. And then I worked with, through the years, Chris Hebb and Dave Randorf and John Shorthouse and Dan Murphy. There's so many of us that went on. People behind the scenes, a gentleman by the name of Randy Stevens, who's now a big deal down south as a producer with Fox Sports. Mike Hall, who was really the soul of Sports Page, a producer who does all the video work now, or has done all. I think he's retired now, Mike, but he did all the video work for the Canucks through the years. And every you saw something that impressed you on the scoreboard at GM Place or Rogers Arena, that was Mike that was responsible. And he came from Sports Page. A lot of us did. And it was good because it was a real fun environment, hard-working environment, and also a very competitive environment. We competed with each other, I think, in terms of reporting and editing and producing and hosting, and I think it made everybody better. Yeah. So to work with that kind of talent can be intimidating, but also makes you a better person. Yeah. Well, pardon me, you're not necessarily a better person. I'm a terrible person, but it made me a better broadcaster.
One of, I don't know if it would be a legacy or one of your staples. I was just reading a friend's social media post about his kid, took a shot in hockey and said, up where Johnny used to keep his Playboys or something along those lines.
Yeah. Sins, snaps it, and scores. Tyler Johnson goes the other way, takes shot, scores. Oh, top shelf for Mom keeps the peanut butter.
I always remember that with you.
Corny sayings is probably the best way to say it. Yeah, top shelf for Mom keeps the peanut butter.
Yes.
Which a lot of the stuff that I did was stuff that I heard from my dad, or I had a sports obsessed family, along with being very artistic family, but. Sports obsessed family. There's sayings you picked up through the years. Top shelf for Mom keeps the peanut butter. Top shelf for Uncle Fred keeps the Playboys. Whatever, whatever the case may be. But I just thought to myself, and to this day, I mean, you hear sports guys, they're just so generic. Everybody's just saying the same things over and over again. Just try to do something to separate yourself from people. And even if it comes across as corny, take a chance and do something that's a little bit different. The other thing that I love to do is I was always a uniform guy. And I would point out uniform colors because I know there were people out there who cared about that sort of thing, and the numbers that players wore as well.
He stops Ryan Kessler. He stops Mason Raymond in the opening 2 minutes, looking like a young Jerry Cheevers. And he gets it, wearing the Big M's old number 27, all while wearing Roman Volpat's old number 12.
Am I right? Not San Jose. It was one of the California Seals. Is that one of the ones that you really liked?
California Seals, California Golden Seals. Yeah.
Golden Seals, right? Yeah. You talked about that one a few times on the radio.
I think because the California Golden Seals, I always had, and they're for people who don't know, defunct, and I guess they would be at this point, they were absorbed at one point by the Minnesota North Stars. So I guess the Dallas Stars are the old California Golden Seals in a way. But I always kind of liked them because the California Golden Seals, you can look it up, they lasted about 7-8 years. They were terrible. They were awful. And so as a result, and as I said, I came from this sports-obsessed family. And I was the youngest. And I had 3 other brothers. I got to see a lot of California Golden Seals games because my brothers would go see the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. Little Donnie didn't get to see the good teams.
Yeah.
So I saw a lot of the California Golden Seals and the Detroit Red Wings, who were also awful at the time.
Okay.
But so I saw a lot of California Golden Seals and their white skates. And I don't know, I always became, and I still think I am, sort of attracted to the underdog in sports, or the teams that didn't last all that long. So they were a favorite of mine.
they were a blue and yellow? Is that what they were?
Green, yellow, and white. And the reason they were green, yellow, and white with white skates is because they were owned by Charlie O'Finley, who also owned the Oakland Athletics, who were a hot team at the time. Their colors were green, yellow, and white, much like the Minnesota North Stars. The Oakland A's to this day, and back then, are known for wearing white cleats. They were the only team in Major League Baseball that wore white cleats. So Charlie O'Finley thought it would be a good idea, you can look this up, for his team to wear white skates. And they did for a few seasons. And I think what happened is, after a few seasons, the trainers complained enough that they had to keep polishing these things and, putting white polish. So that went out the door. But you can look it up. They wore white skates and stuff like that. I just remember. I just love stuff like that.
So what was more weird, those or the Cooperalls?
Oh boy. Yeah, they both didn't last all that long. I think it's a tie. I'll as far as what my favorite was, I would say Cooperalls, just because I, like a lot of beer league players, wore Cooperalls. So, but the problem with Cooperalls, and NHL players have told me this, the Flyers and the Whalers actually wore them, is that when you hit the ice, if you fell, well, you slid way further in Cooperalls than you did with normal hockey socks. Yeah. So it was a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah. Okay, so you went from Sports Page, and then where did your path go after that? So
I spent 16 and a half years at Sports Page. It was wonderful. I loved reporting, editing, probably as much or more than hosting. But after 16 and a half years, you get kind of itchy. You get offers, and I decided to go to CKNW for a year to do a talk show, to take over from Dan Russell, as a matter of fact, who was a Vancouver legend. And I don't know, for some reason, Dan and the management, things didn't work out for them. And so I took over there for a year. I didn't like it that much.
That would have been the night show then?
Yeah.
Was it after the hockey games?
It's called the Late Night Sports Grill.
Yeah.
So it was me and Rick. That's where we first hooked up. Rick Dollywall and I. And then we lasted a year or less. And then I went to Sportsnet from there. I spent 13 years at Sportsnet after that. And at the same time, also worked at Team 1040, then TSN 1040 Radio, doing a drive show with Dave Pratt.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. The good old Dave Pratt.
Speaking of legends. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When did you know that you actually, you made it?
I think I am.
Or did you make it?
I'm insecure. Yeah, I'm not exactly. I think you're right. I'm so insecure that I think that I'm wondering if I did make it. You get some accolades and some offers, and I think, one of the things in our business that I think is important in a strange way is to never think you've made it, to keep trying really hard and trying different things. And I don't know. I'm here with you, so I must have made it, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
This is the moment, right?
This
here.
is it. You're on the hall.
That's it. Yeah. Is there another hall? Yeah. I know. This might be it. Now that you mention it. Yeah.
You mentioned Dollywall there, Rick Dollywall.
Yeah.
I can't hear his name without hearing the little chime song that the Halford and Bruff team have made.
Right.
Every time I hear his name, that's the Rick Dollywall song goes through my head. Sorry.
Yeah.
I shouldn't sing on radio. So yeah, your story is not like mine, but similar. We have some similar kind of connections there. I went to school, and my parents were into, my dad was a construction worker.
Sure.
They wanted me to get into the trades. I wanted to become a film editor, and I went to my parents and said, hey, I want to go to Columbia school, the same school that you went to. Yeah. So myself and another buddy from school in our careers class decided, let's go to Columbia. We'll go do the acceptance exam and all that. Brought it home to my parents, and they said, no, we're not paying for that. You need to take a trade.
Smart.
So I got myself into a trade, and I did gas fitting for about 7 years and hated it. It gave me something in my back pocket that I could always count on, right?
Your parents are smart.
I got out of the gas industry, but while I was in there, I was doing nighttime work. I was working at TSN, the studio downtown, doing sports desk. with Dave Randorf, David Pratt, Farhan.
Yeah.
Loved it. But I was sitting in the producer's booth one day and hearing what he was making. And I was like, hold on, I'm making the same as a tradesman.
Yeah.
So I stayed in the trades. Yeah. Eventually I got out of the trades and came back to it when the offer was right. I worked for the utility company for quite a while. And now I'm here. You had a brother that passed away. Would you mind talking about that?
No, I wouldn't mind that at all. And actually, I have 3 older brothers, 2 sisters. But the brother that you speak of, and I've had 2 pass away. You have to realize that I'm the last of 6 kids, and I was a mistake. My mom and dad had me in their late 40s, and when they were in their late 40s, so my brothers and sisters are all quite a bit older than me. He's not the only one who's passed away, but we're talking about Dave here, and him and I were really close. He was 8 or 9 years older than me, and he was a tremendous athlete, a great lacrosse player, just good at everything, but especially lacrosse. And whatever he did, and whatever he went to watch or play, I tagged along. I was the little brother, and that's where I got into sports, was through him. He ended up going to Ohio State in a lacrosse scholarship, played pro lacrosse, played in the WLA, won a Minto Cup with the Richmond Roadrunners, even though he played for Burnaby. That's a long story. But he was just somebody that I just looked up to so much. And and my whole family was into sports. My dad's religion was the NFL Sunday mornings and hockey night in Canada. But Dave and I just went all around Vancouver. He started a ball hockey team. I was on that team. Anything he did, I tagged along. He let me tag along and help him and play and do all those things. So that's where he was really important to me. He passed away of cancer in 2014. Yeah. And it just a huge influence on me. That was really tough. It took a while, and anybody who's gone through that knows how hard it is. But but if it wasn't for him, I don't think I'd be where I am today, just because he cultivated the interest in sports for me. And I loved it just as much as he did. He was like really knowledgeable, and I think maybe I got into the minutia of sports because of him. And it was just really, really important. And when he ended up being he was an accountant, but also a bartender, kind of like you with the 2 occupations. And the lifestyle wasn't great. And that got to him. He smoked a lot, to be honest with you. That got to him. So he passed away in his early 60s. But again, his legacy lives on, and I'm glad my kids got to know him, and my wife got to know him, and it's just to this day very important to me. And I should say too, I had another brother, Bob, who's also passed away, a brilliant guy who helped design the venting systems at BC Place.
Oh, wow.
He's a draftsman. He's incredibly smart. I have another brother, Gary, who owned an infamous strip club in Vancouver, Gary Taylor's Show Lounge. And anybody who grew up around the 70s knew about that place. It was one of the first strip clubs in Vancouver, Western Canada, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Vancouver was kind of known as the Sin City back then, wasn't it?
It really was. I really miss it, that part of it. But it was so much fun. And honestly, I didn't go down there much. I was too young. Yeah. But, I hear all the stories and all the characters hanging around our house, and it was crazy. And, eventually there were, not that it's the greatest thing in the world, but there were strip bars on every corner. And I don't know if you remember that.
No, I'm not that old.
No,
sorry.
But it was just really fun and crazy. Not that you have to have strip bars to do that, but just in general.
Yeah. There was a lot more like nightlife back then. Like my dad used to play the drums for a band downtown at something Den. Lassiter's Den. That's it. Yeah. Well, he probably knows my brother. My brother was a drummer. Gary, the one who owned the strip club. Oh, okay. Yeah. He was a drummer, and I wonder, maybe he knows him. Yeah. So my dad was a drummer for this band. It was called the 5-Man Cargo. It was actually Bruce Allen's first band that he managed, which was pretty cool. We found that out like many years later. I was doing some research on him and stuff. But we're from Ireland. So he emigrated from Ireland. Oh, awesome. Came here. They only lived here for about a year, and then he kind of got homesick, and so they went home. So that was the end of his 5-Man Cargo days. They ended up being a like a fairly decent Vancouver house band. So back in the day.
Yeah, no,
So-
it was a great live music scene in Vancouver as well. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I don't know. I haven't gone out.
No.
I haven't gone out at night for the last 40 years or something like less than that.
Yeah.
But it sure was fun back then, and live music was part of it. And my brother was right in the middle of it. I bet they would know each other.
Yeah. So when did you get the call about the Hall of Fame?
That would have been in early 2024, and it was from Tom Mainick, who runs the Hall of Fame, and it was also on the call was my friend Scott Rintoul. I worked with at Sportsnet, and that was important. He knew it would be important to me to have him on the call. Tom knew that, and I just love Scott, and he was on the call, and I could just tell he was very happy for me, and it was just it was a great moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that was last year in Burnaby.
Yeah.
Who else was in your class then?
The Burnaby Sports Hall of Fame was funny because Louis Passaglia was in. And the funny part about that is that Louis went to I went to Alpha in Burnaby, kind of a notorious school, not because of me, other reasons. But Louis went to Notre Dame in East Van. I just assumed he was an East Van guy. Turned out and he's a bit older than me. Turned out we grew up like a block away from each other. Well, not a block, but maybe about 4 or 5 blocks away from each other in North Burnaby. And I always say North Burnaby because people from North Burnaby always call themselves North Burnabyites or whatever you call it, as opposed to South Burnaby. There's a division there. If you grew up there, you know what I talk. I had no idea that he grew up in Burnaby. So that was really, really special. Mike Santorelli was in there as well. He used to play for the Canucks. So it was a really, and somebody that I had covered and interviewed before. So that was really important. BC Sports Hall of Fame. For me, it was just such a surprise. I was in the same class as Dick Zokol.
Okay.
I just assumed Dick Zokol was in the BC
golfer.
Sports Hall of Fame a long time ago, and he wasn't. We're in the same class. The other person who was, and such a great guy, a friend, the other person who was in the same class as me was Glenn Ringdahl, an executive with the BC Lions, and especially probably more well known as an executive with the Vancouver Canucks. And he's living in the Coquitlam Moody area like I am now, and I see him every once in a while, and he ended up being in the same class. So that was really, really special to have them there at the BC Sports Hall of Fame induction banquet.
So over the years, you've done lots of interviews.
Yeah.
Other than this one, who has been your favorite interview that you've done?
Well, through the years, I've definitely appreciated the bad interviews more. Yes, sometimes they make it to air. The all-time interview that sticks out, it wasn't even an interview. It was Reggie Miller of the Indiana Pacers, who on 2 occasions not only refused to do an interview with me, and not just me, it was a scrum situation, didn't talk. Reggie, you got time for a quick interview? It was just incredible, the balls on him. Like they just finished destroying the Grizzlies by 900 points, and he didn't even acknowledge us. And the beauty, and this happened twice, the beauty of it was, and I know this is kind of diverting away from your question.
No.
But it's one, is that like 3-4 weeks later, I heard him on Dan Patrick on ESPN, and he's like eloquent. But of course, we were just little Vancouver.
Yeah.
What a prick! I'm sorry. And it just like, man, I admire that to be such an a-hole, And it was so I always remember that, and it happened twice to us. Didn't even tell us to F off, just ignored us completely. And then went off to the showers, and it was...
Were there American broadcasters there at the same time asking questions?
I don't think so. I think it was all Canadians. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe he's anti-Canadian, like a few people are now. South
we won't
of the
go
border.
there.
These days. I'll tell you one other one that stuck out for me, and this is kind of obvious, but I... had just gotten hired at Sports Page. I go to the Chicago Blackhawks practice. They were playing the Canucks later that day. Morning skate. Well, there's Denny Savard.
Oh,
big name, right, in the NHL at the time. What a player. And so he's with the Chicago Blackhawks, and I'm with Paul Carson, and he's trying to show me the ropes. And he calls Denny Savard over. Back then, it's not like this now. You could go and you could stand ringside, just call the players over to get an interview. I didn't know this at the time. these are NHL guys. They're not going to do that, are they? But they did. And so Paul calls them over, and he tells Denny the whole story. Hey, Denny, this is Don. He's from up north. This is his first NHL. And Denny Savard was like, oh, let's do it. And he was just fantastic. He was just so nice. You know, if I can say, very Canadian, just a nice, intelligent person, understood the situation, had the time of day for me, and then some. And that's one I'll never forget. And he doesn't know this story; he doesn't care. But I remember
But it stuck out to you.
and it was and it wasn't like he was. Not that it would matter, but it wasn't like he was a journeyman player or some guy just hanging on. This was a star in the National Hockey League. And quite the contrast to Reggie Miller, as a matter of fact. It was just so nice, and that's one of the interviews that sticks out to me. The very first one I did with a big name. Another one that sticks out is Gretzky. We did a story. We were doing a story on Yari Curry, a television story on Yari Curry, and I needed to get a clip from somebody else, an interview with somebody else on the team. And I asked Wayne if he could do an interview, and he said, absolutely, no problem. And the interview went fine, as it often does with Wayne Gretzky. But I'll always remember this was in the peak of his career. 200-point seasons and accolades out the yin yang and attention from every media outlet and various TV shows across the world. And he looks at me and he says, "Where would you like me to stand?" And I'm thinking, you can stand wherever you want. I didn't say that to my wife right here, but just a very Canadian moment. I mean, who would do that given his stature? Now, I don't even remember how the interview went, but I just remember how polite he was before that, and that really stuck out.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, I think our time is up. Is there anything else you'd want to add in here?
Oh, and if we're talking about my career, I just feel blessed. First of all, to be here with you, number one, but it's just such a great occupation. I honestly, I pinch myself thinking of the way things have gone. I think I did things right. I don't know. My son's getting into broadcasting. I'm not really sure which direction to go. Things are so different now.
Yeah.
But I loved that I was able to experience something different, and I followed the pattern that you were supposed to, like going up north, going to a small town, sacrificing.
Putting in your time.
Leaving my friends and my family to go up north, putting in my time. But it was a great experience. Yeah. And you're not getting anywhere unless you sacrifice. And I'm glad that just so happy that it all worked out in a big way, and just worked with some really talented people that I learned off of and ended up loving my job. And I just can't say enough about the way things have gone for me. I'm just very, very grateful.
Sorry, you touched on something there about how the industry has changed now. So before we close here, it has changed a lot, eh? It's some of your shows that were on Team 1040 when they closed down. So you've got Sakaris and Price. Yeah. Who else? There's you guys.
Halford and Brough.
Halford and Brough. Halford and Brough are the main ones on the radio, and there's a lot more podcasts happening or TV shows. Your show. Yeah. Do you see the podcast industry as being more of the way to do it now?
Well, I think one of the reasons people want to, because podcasts are just all over the place now. I think a lot of people think they're easy, and anybody can do a podcast, and there's some truth to that. The podcast industry is, you look at the charts, there's various charts out there. Raphonic is one. There are 7 million podcasts out there. I think the model that works is the one that Halford and Brough have established and we've established, in that you've still got that foundation of traditional broadcasting. We're a television show. Halford and Brough are a radio show. So there's that foundation. Yeah. And there's some strength there. You're working for strong companies. But our shows are also podcasts. And you branch out from there. Now, there's some podcasts who work. I mean, there's some incredible podcasts out there that are incredibly successful on their own. But I think to have that foundation of some traditional media and being able to branch out, not only with the podcast, but on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram. I think that's one way to go these days. That is very, very important.
Yeah.
That you get your message out there through these various platforms. And then the other thing I would say is also to tell kids to do things like what you're doing, and that's like, not just have broadcasting, but have something to fall back on as well.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Is it also the control? You have more control over a podcast, I think, than having, the government saying, well, you have to follow these rules for radio or for television.
And,
right?
and that's where having the traditional platform falls a little short, maybe, because there are rules there when you're working for somebody else, and the CRTC is involved. But with a podcast, that freedom, and you can swear and you can do this and you can do that. That's kind of cool too. It's just I think if you've got a podcast going, you have to shoot out through social media as well. Get your clips out there with Twitter. Get your clips out there with YouTube. Whatever other platforms you can. And so it's not just a podcast. You have various vehicles that can help you promote your podcast.
Is that Big Ry that does that all for you guys?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming in.
Anytime.
Anytime? Tomorrow?
Well, maybe not tomorrow.
It's been a real pleasure. I sincerely am very appreciative of you taking the time to come in.
No problem, Mark. It's anytime, like I say.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
I want to thank Don Taylor for coming onto the podcast today. If you like what you saw, please hit that like button. Leave a comment. Let us know other topics that you guys would like us to follow, other people you'd like us to try and get onto the show. Make sure you follow us on social media. Thank you again. See you next time.